Most financial advice is all the same. Save your pennies, stop buying coffee, live on beans and rice. Basically live as frugally as possible until the end of your life, and then you can enjoy your money. And listen, if you're drowning in debt or you want to reach a financial goal quickly, then that advice kind of works. It's actually the same mindset that I used to pay off over $85,000 of debt in under 2.5 years. But nobody really talks about what happens after that. What happens when you've done everything right? Like you've built your savings, you're investing regularly, and you actually are lucky enough to have some money left over at the end of the month. At that point of the financial journey, it's not really all about just spending less, it's about spending better. Because your money isn't just meant to sit in a savings account waiting for some future version of you to enjoy it. It's also a tool that you can use to live better right now, and I don't think you should have to wait. So these are the 10 things that you should upgrade once you have money. Starting with the first one that I think most people overlook, and that is shoes. This is one of the most underrated categories to spend a little bit more money on. Like, actually think about it. Not only are most cheap shoes really uncomfortable, but you end up spending more money on them in the long run. Because cheap shoes are meant to be replaced and not repaired. They're not meant to last. They're basically made to wear out quickly, so you have to keep rebuying them. Where instead, you could just spend a little bit more money up front on a high quality and comfortable pair of shoes that you can wear over and over again, and even better, you can actually get them fixed instead of having to replace them. Because especially with footwear, every time you optimize for just the price, you end up paying a higher expense for it later on. Not only do you end up paying for it in discomfort, in blisters, in sweat, in odor, like it's not a good time, but you're also paying more money and arguably creating more waste in the long run just replacing these shoes over and over. And the moment I started paying a little bit more upfront for a higher quality shoe that is, for example, made of real genuine leather, where the sole is stitched to the upper instead of glued, it's not made of plastic, you can pretty much feel the difference right away. And especially with footwear, it's really one of those purchases that you make that start to get you in the mindset of focusing on quality rather than quantity. And just full stop, any shoe that is uncomfortable or leaves you limping after a couple of hours is never worth the money, no matter how good they look. So spend a little bit more on footwear, on comfortable sneakers, comfortable loafers, comfortable boots, and your feet will thank you in the long run. And speaking of shoes, basically there is a rule of thumb that you should really invest in things that separate you from the floor. So shoes for your feet, a good chair for your butt, and a really good mattress for your back. And just your, everything in general. For your sleep, invest in your sleep. Like, think about it. We spend 1/3 of our lives sleeping, and sleep is the number one thing that will directly impact your mood, your mental focus, your productivity, your recovery. Pretty much everything is affected by sleep. So you gotta make sure that it's good. As in, it pretty much affects everything you need to do to live well and be productive. So a good sleep has such a high return on investment. And I really don't think that the best sleep should be reserved to when you're staying in some kind of luxury hotel. Those experiences don't really happen that often, so I think it's more important to make sure you're investing in things like mattresses, pillows, good breathable bedding made of things like cotton, linen, or bamboo, and even other accessories like earplugs, a good eye mask, a good set of pajamas that are breathable too, and even blackout curtains. You should upgrade your mattress around every 7 to 10 years, which actually I am due for that. And you should upgrade your pillows, which most people sleep on. See what I did there? Every 1 to 2 years, because they also tend to lose their shape and they collect all kinds of nasties like sweat, dead skin cells, and dust mites. And this is something that I'm personally spending a little bit more money on right now because we also just moved and the curtains in our bedroom are sheer. So we're actually being woken up a lot earlier than we want to and having kind of incomplete sleeps. So investing in something like blackout curtains is going to be my next upgrade. Totally worth the money. This next one might be a little bit controversial, but if you're a person who's particularly busy, then I think it is important to utilize this every once in a while when you need it, and that is spending more money on convenience. And I do think that this is a bit controversial because especially if you're a Gen Z or millennial, you often get shamed for spending more money on little conveniences. Things on like delivery, meal kits, or things like a robot vacuum, all of that is considered a waste. I really actually want one of those. And I get it because the fees, for example, can be pretty expensive. But if you're in a particularly busy season of your life, you feel stretched really thin, then the extra labor of the domestic tasks that we still need to do every day, like cooking, cleaning, going grocery shopping, that is real stress and can take up a lot of your time that you could otherwise be spending elsewhere on higher return activities. So spending a little bit more money on conveniences, especially when you really feel like you need that help, number one is that it can really reduce the mental load of that ongoing to-do list on top of all your other responsibilities. And number two is that it simply just buys back some of your time. Like if you know someone who's particularly busy and you always wonder how they get it all done, likely they have a little bit of help in this area. They've either hired a cleaner, they've ordered meal delivery kits or grocery delivery, they've got a dog walker, they take their kids to daycare, or they hire a babysitter. It obviously does cost a bit more money, and it's not something that you necessarily need to buy into all the time, because I do think it can contribute to lifestyle creep if you're too reliant on it. But sometimes the question isn't necessarily, can I do this myself for less? But rather a better question to ask is this the best use of my time right now? And when you do have a little bit of money to spend, one of the best things that money can buy is your time. So it's really important to weigh what's worth it and what's not. And ideally, some of that extra time that you may have bought back can be invested into this next thing, and that is your health and your fitness. These days, actually, one of my biggest spending categories in my discretionary budget is on my gym membership. And quite frankly, I do not regret it. I pay for a gym that I genuinely enjoy going to, and 1 to 2 days a week, I work in either small group setting with a personal trainer or one-on-one. And it has been amazing. I'm stronger than I've ever been. I'm more confident. And when I started working with a coach in particular, I saw better results in my first 6 months than I had in a decade of just waffling with my training. Because with this, what I'm paying for here is not necessarily the workouts themselves. I think most of us know what to do, and you definitely don't need to pay a lot of money to get fit. But what I'm really paying for here instead is consistency. One of the things I absolutely hate more than anything is wasting money. So if I have paid for a session, then you best believe I'm showing up. It's kind of an expensive hack to stay consistent, but it works nonetheless. And no, I am absolutely not saying that you need an expensive gym membership and access to a personal trainer to get fit. There are plenty of ways to invest in your health and fitness. But I do think it is worth it to spend a little bit of money if you do struggle with things like consistency, or if you simply really enjoy it. For you, it could be something like getting a subscription to an app so you can get workouts anytime, or paying for YouTube Premium so you can do your workouts without interruptions from ads. It could be things like investing in dance classes or Pilates, investing in equipment like running shoes or like a pickleball racket, or even just spending a little bit more money on healthy groceries so that you can eat well at home and reach your goals. An investment in your health is ultimately an investment in your mobility, your strength, your self-confidence, and your independence as you age. It's always going to be worth the money. Which takes me into the next one that won't necessarily improve the way you look or feel right away. But the first time something expensive happens, then you're gonna really see why this is so high up on the list, and that is investing in preventative healthcare. So things like getting your skin checked at the dermatologist, going for regular dental cleanings, and getting your eyes checked when they're due. Depending on where you live and whether or not you have insurance, this still could cost you money through things like deductibles, or if it's publicly funded, which it is in some places, then you might have to pay for this in time. But it is worth it to stay on top of these things. And although I don't love it, unfortunately, if you do have a little bit of extra money and can afford it, sometimes access to those things is also easier and faster if you're willing to pay for it. It's not something that's fun to pay for, but I do think it is worth it. But either way, whatever your access, prevention is always going to be easier and unfortunately more affordable than treatment. Trust me, I am a pharmacist, I work in oncology. These treatments can be expensive. And if something like an illness is caught early, that is going to be your best chance at cure. So whether you're investing money, time, or simply just staying on top of your appointments, looking after your health before something is obviously wrong is always going to be worth that investment. And if you are lucky enough to have things like private insurance through your work, for example, then make sure you're using up all of your benefits. If you pay into benefits through your employer every single month and don't use it up, then you're wasting money. So especially if you're lucky enough to have some coverage, take advantage of that. Go to your massage appointments, your physiotherapy appointments. Make sure you use up your benefits to their full potential because you're paying for it. Next is on your wardrobe. And no, this doesn't mean that you need to throw out all the clothes you already have and replace it with expensive designer clothes. We are not about that on this channel. Upgrading your wardrobe to one that you love and actually wear, it doesn't need to be expensive at all. And I know what you're thinking, saying that upgrading and spending a little bit more money on clothes being worth the money? Isn't that kind of like wasteful and frivolous, really vain? Kind of. Like, as a former shopaholic, I can agree with that, especially if you're buying clothes for the wrong reasons like I used to. But if you focus more on shopping intentionally and buy clothes that are well constructed, focus on quality rather than quantity, and focus on other factors like cost per use, material, construction, and buy clothes that you actually feel good in, then it's 100% worth it. Because what you wear actually matters a lot more than you might think. And most of us want to believe that what you wear doesn't matter or shouldn't matter, but human psychology and research proves that it actually does. Research consistently shows that what we wear not only affects how others see us, but how we see ourselves and how we perform. And in a survey of over 700 women, 96% reported that they felt more confident if they liked what they're wearing, and they felt that they performed better at work and had a better opportunity for growth in their companies. So as much as you don't want to think so, what you wear matters. But rather than feeling pressure to spend a ton of money here upgrading your entire wardrobe, I think your money is actually going to be much better spent, and it's better to focus on these two areas instead, on quality and on tailoring. Because even the most affordable wardrobe will look more expensive if the clothes fit you properly. So if you don't sew yourself, then make good friends with a tailor. I absolutely love my tailor, and I would say that most clothes are not actually designed to fit directly off the rack. Things often do need to be taken in or hemmed up for the clothes to fit you well. And if you do have clothes in your closet that you're not wearing, you will actually get the most out of your money that's already been spent by going to a tailor. Because if you have a lot of clothes that you're not wearing because they don't fit well, you'll actually start wearing them more and getting your money's worth that way. They're basically your secret cost per wear maximizers, so definitely use them. And if you can sew yourself, I mean, even better. Daily use items. Some of the best money you're ever going to spend is on the things you use every single day. So think things like your office chair, your pot and pan set, good kitchen knives, or even spending a bit more money on the good coffee beans so you can make cafe-style coffee at home. And in particular, one of the best investments I could have ever made in my entire work setup was in my office chair. I used to sit in like a terrible, cheap office chair that was literally falling apart for years until I finally bit the bullet and spent $1,000 on my Herman Miller chair. And believe me, spending that amount of money on something as basic and boring as an office chair mentally was actually really hard for me to do, but it has paid itself back in dividends because I can sit and do my work for hours on end without having any back pain. And I've had that chair for around 7 or 8 years at this point. So its cost per use at this point is basically zero. This chair has really protected my back. It has my back. But your version of your daily upgrade doesn't need to be necessarily as expensive as that. I will always say invest in a good chair, but for you, it could be something like buying a good set of kitchen knives if you like cooking a lot, or buying a really heavy-duty cutting board, or upgrading your closet hangers so they all match and your clothes stop falling down. It's just like little things that happen throughout your day that are either annoying, physically painful, or simply just okay, where you just really haven't taken the time to address it. I think those are perfect opportunities to slowly upgrade and spend a little bit more money in your life there. Because at the end of the day, how we spend our days is how we spend our lives. We like to think that our lives are made up of the big events, but really it's the things you do on a daily basis and your daily routine that really makes up life. So you want it to be a good experience. Make sure you're not saving too much. And I know that sounds a little bit weird. Everybody tells you to save money, so let me explain. Back when I first paid off my debt, my next financial goals were to do 2 things. 1, to build up my 6-month emergency fund, and 2, to start getting confident with investing. Because admittedly, I was a bit of a late bloomer when it came to my own financial journey. I didn't even start investing until my mid-30s, so I had a lot of catching up to do. So for the last around 4 or 5 years of my own financial journey, I've actually been laser focused on maxing out all of my investment accounts, especially my tax advantage accounts like my TFSA, FHSA, and RRSP. Think of it as like your 401k or your Roth IRA if you're in the US. And I actually ended up doing that, but then I followed it up by making a huge mistake that I think happens a lot more than people think, especially as they start making more money. And that was I saved too much. Yes, it's a very good problem to have, and I am grateful for it every single day. But the other thing I find is that I really struggle with a scarcity mindset, and I just think that money's all gonna go away overnight. So it actually pushes me to want to store cash a lot more and just have it sitting in a savings account. Emotionally, it just made me feel a lot safer, but I realized mathematically it wasn't really working in my favor. Especially as I get older too, I really do need to be prioritizing investing. And I basically realized that that money could be working harder for me elsewhere, which was in the stock market. So I started to take a lot of that money out and put it into a non-registered taxable investment account. So if you're in a really good financial position, you do need to ask if you're potentially saving too much money. Are you losing out? And can that money be working harder for you elsewhere? Some people might do things like buy into real estate or invest in businesses. For me, my best option was to start investing more of that money into a non-registered taxable account. So if you're in a financial position where you've got your emergency fund fully funded and you're comfortable with that, you're hitting your employer retirement matches, you're maxing out your tax advantage accounts, then the next step for you could be to move on to some taxable investing. Basically, I would just rather my money be working harder for me in the stock market than just sitting in a savings account earning interest that could be just eaten up by inflation. And of course, everybody's number here is going to be different depending on your job, your family situation, and your appetite for risk. At the end of the day, a lot of the decisions we make around money is more based on emotion than it is on math or logic. But once you've built a solid financial foundation, don't forget that your money should be working as hard as you do. This next upgrade has probably had the single biggest impact on not only my work, but on my earning potential too. And it has absolutely nothing to do with me working more hours or spending more money upgrading equipment or anything like that. It was learning how to buy back my time. So I hired.
Yeah.
I've been on YouTube for almost 10 years now, and for most of those years, I was a solopreneur. Up until the end of 2023, I was working full-time as a pharmacist and building up my own YouTube channel, doing all of my own scripting, filming, editing, thumbnails. I did it all. And I actually took pride in that. And I don't regret that, but the trade-off was I burnt myself out all the time. I was definitely working 70 to 80-hour weeks or more, and it was not sustainable. I was actually putting out worse work, and I was on the brink of quitting many times. So I hired an editor because I realized not only was I doing really not sustainable, I was being busy, but not being efficient or effective. Creatively, I absolutely love it, but it does eat up way too much of my time. And I also realized that there's people out there that can do it better than me. I also have help with my thumbnail editors. Sometimes I get help with scripting. So hiring a team to help me has not only taken a ton off my plate, but it's just given me so much more time back. And I actually feel like I am putting out much better work because of it. And it's actually helped me earn more money. The exact same logic applies if you do something like hiring movers, hiring a cleaner, getting an assistant, or investing in a coach or a mentor. If you can spend a bit of money hiring people who can do things better than you can free up a lot of your time and do better work because of it. This next one might be a bit underrated, but it has such a huge return on investment that I think most people sleep on, and that is hobbies. And you're probably thinking like, yeah, okay, who has the time for that? But I truly believe, especially these days, hobbies are probably the most important thing that you can invest in. And they're probably going to be one of your number one defenses against burnout. Because I also think that once you start earning more money, there's kind of this background pressure to maintain and sustain that. So oftentimes there's a risk of actually doubling down and working more. So that's why having a hobby that you're genuinely interested, that gives you some downtime, is so important. It just scratches a different part of your brain, and depending on what the hobby is, it can often give you the skills that can help you level up in your own career. For example, YouTube for me started as a hobby. I had just graduated pharmacy and I started in a career that's very clinical and left brain. So I was just craving for something creative. But that hobby ended up teaching me other skills that I didn't even realize, like public speaking, camera confidence, editing, storytelling. These ended up being high ROI skills that are highly sought after today and are pretty useful. But even if your hobby never becomes your full-time job, they still pay you back in a lot of ways, and they're really important to have. Whether it's things like photography, sewing, cake decorating, running, learning an instrument, creative hobbies not only give you an outlet that we all need, but it can also help you build skills, confidence, and a sense of purpose that you may not have tapped into otherwise. And if doing your hobby does require spending a bit of money there, then I think it is totally worth it. So there's no pressure to upgrade these things all at once. In fact, if you do, I feel like it kind of risks you inflating your lifestyle a little too quickly, but they are important upgrades that once you do make them will truly improve your quality of life and daily experience. But if you want to know the things that are almost never worth the money, no matter how much money you make, then watch this video next. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next week. Bye.